My boss framed me for a scandal. She didn't know I kept everything. Block 1. The fall begins. I remember the exact moment my world started crumbling. Not because it was loud or dramatic, but because it was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that seeps into your bones. The kind that makes your instincts scream even before your brain catches up. It was a Tuesday, 9:13 a.m. I was sitting at my desk at Argonne Tech, sipping my first coffee of the day. Lukewarm, overly sweet, and exactly how I liked it. I was going over a budget proposal for one of our European clients when I saw the calendar notification pop up. Emergency all-hands meeting, 10:00 a.m., conference room A. That was the first red flag. Emergency meetings at Argonne Tech were rare. We were a cybersecurity consultancy firm. Emergencies meant leaks, breaches, high-stakes mistakes. But no one had said a word. Not even Dana. And Dana was always the first to know. My name is Natalie Ruiz. I'm 36 years old, senior strategy analyst at Argonne Tech for almost 8 years. I'm the type who color-codes spreadsheets, double-checks meeting minutes, and has a backup charger for every device. The kind of person companies rely on but rarely reward. I never sought the spotlight. I built quiet systems that made noisy people look good. Noisy people like my boss, Cassandra Grant. Cassandra was all angles and polish, the kind of woman who wore power like perfume. She was always just a little too sharp, a little too confident, and people loved her for it. When she got promoted to VP of Global Strategy last year, no one was surprised. She gave all the right speeches, smiled at the board the right way, and let people think her brilliance was spontaneous instead of scripted. What most people didn't know was that half her visionary insights came from the decks I made, the memos I drafted, the data I processed until 2 a.m. while she was on networking trips in Cabo. At 10 a.m. sharp, I walked into conference room A to find the entire floor already seated. The tension was thick. I took my usual seat at the end of the table, near the window, close enough to hear everything but far enough to stay invisible, just how I liked it. Cassandra stood at the head of the room, flanked by HR and 2 men in gray suits I didn't recognize. Her expression was hard to read, cool, rehearsed. But when she looked at me, her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Natalie," she said, "can you please stay after the meeting? We need a word." My stomach dropped. The meeting was short and sterile. Cassandra announced that Argonne Tech was launching an internal investigation into financial irregularities involving external vendor contracts. She said the company had recently discovered serious discrepancies in our procurement system. Someone had been funneling payments to shell companies. Legal and HR would be conducting interviews immediately. By the time she finished, I could barely hear over the sound of my pulse pounding in my ears. After everyone filed out, I stayed, sitting stiffly in the same chair. The 2 men in suits didn't leave. One of them handed me a folder, thick, full of printed emails, transaction records, and screenshots. I opened it and saw my name. Natalie Ruiz. My employee ID. My login credentials. Next to hundreds of flagged transactions I'd never authorized. "This is a misunderstanding," I said, my voice too calm to be believable. Cassandra didn't look at me. "We're just following the evidence," she replied. That's when I knew. She'd set me up, and I was going to burn everything down before she took me with her. Block 2. The web she wove. I left the conference room with the folder pressed tightly against my chest, like a shield. My coworkers avoided my eyes as I passed. A few of them whispered behind their hands. Others just stared like I was already guilty. The news had spread faster than any press release. By the time I got back to my desk, my inbox had already been disabled. My work laptop wouldn't let me log in. HR was efficient like that. Cassandra must have planned this for weeks. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'd been suspicious of her for months. Not because I thought she'd ever do something like this, but because she'd gotten sloppy. Power had made her careless. It started with the vendor swap. About 6 months ago, Cassandra instructed me to approve a new data visualization vendor for our analytics team, some obscure firm out of New Jersey called Lumetric Systems. They weren't on our pre-approved list. In fact, they weren't even properly registered with our procurement department. But she insisted. Fast-track it. No red tape, she had said, flipping her hair like it was just another Wednesday. I'd followed orders, reluctantly. But I also flagged the file in my own offline archive, something I'd been keeping since the day Cassandra took credit for a pitch I had stayed up all night perfecting. I called the folder Shadow Protocol. In it, I documented everything she did that seemed off. Vendor switches that didn't go through finance, travel reimbursements that exceeded policy limits, personal expenses masked as strategic dinners. I never thought I'd need that backup. It was just insurance, something to satisfy the little voice in my head that whispered, "She's dangerous. Be ready." Now I was glad I'd listened. By noon that day, I was officially suspended pending investigation. Security escorted me out. My badge was deactivated. They didn't even let me grab my notebook. But I had what mattered. A flash drive ID, backed up 2 nights earlier, before Cassandra pulled the trigger. I went straight home, locked the door behind me, and dumped the contents of the flash drive into my personal laptop. Thousands of files, emails, Excel sheets, transaction logs, chat exports, and deep in the metadata, Cassandra's fingerprints. She had used my login credentials, or more accurately, someone had, from an IP address that didn't match my laptop's, or any device I'd used while on ArgonTech's VPN. That was the first smoking gun. But there was more. I searched for the shell companies listed in the folder HR gave me, the ones receiving fraudulent payments. One of them, Digital Nova Consulting, had an address registered in Miami. I cross-checked that address. It was a beachfront condo, owned by none other than Julian Mercer, Cassandra's ex-husband. They'd divorced amicably 2 years ago. But I remembered something Cassandra once let slip at a team happy hour. Julian still helps me move things off the books when I need to. Back then, I thought she was joking. Now it sounded like a confession. I was staring at a conspiracy. Not just office politics. This was white-collar crime. And I was the patsy. But I wasn't going down easy. Not without a fight. And not before everyone at ArgonTech, from the interns to the board of directors, found out who Cassandra Grant really was. Block 3, Allies and Enemies. For the first few days, I barely left my apartment. I kept the blinds shut, the lights low, and my phone on silent. HR hadn't called again. The silence from ArgonTech was suffocating, like a slow exhale before the real storm hit. But I wasn't just waiting. I was preparing. I went over every file from my Shadow Protocol archive. Every email Cassandra had forwarded to me without copying legal. Every budget approval she forced through with emergency stamps. Every Slack message where she dropped passive threats disguised as casual directives. It wasn't just enough to know she was dirty. I had to build a story, one the board couldn't ignore, but I needed a witness. The first person I thought of was Dana. Dana Martinez had been my closest friend at ArgonTech. We'd started on the same week, bonded over bad coffee and late nights fixing Cassandra's strategies. Dana was sharp, detail-obsessed, and, most importantly, loyal. If there was anyone who might have noticed Cassandra's inconsistencies too, it was her. I texted her the next morning. "I know what Cassandra did. If you're in, I need 5 minutes. Come alone." It felt dramatic, but this wasn't just office drama anymore. Dana responded within an hour. "Your place, 6 p.m. When she arrived, she was wearing her company badge and a raincoat that looked like she hadn't taken it off all day. Her face was tight with worry, but when I opened the door, she hugged me. Hard. "I knew it wasn't you," she said, before I even offered coffee. We sat down at my dining table, laptop open, flash drive connected. I walked her through everything. The dummy vendors, the redirected payments, the ex-husband connection. Her face turned paler with each click. "Jesus," she whispered. "She used your credentials for all of this?" I nodded. "VPN logs don't match my devices. I ran a trace. There's a spoof trail, but not good enough." Dana exhaled slowly. "You can take this to the board. You can take this to the feds." "I will," I said, "but I need one more thing. Proof she knew about it. In her own words." Dana hesitated, then said something that stopped my heart. She made me scrub the financial audit logs from Q3. Told me it was a cleanup task, but now that I think about it, there were notes. Markers she told me to delete. What kind of markers? Things like NS routing, revised flow, personal tag, weird acronyms. I didn't question it at the time. "Do you still have access?" Dana's eyes narrowed. "Not from work, but I archived my email on my personal Gmail. I kept everything." I stared at her, stunned. "Why?" "Because I stopped trusting her a long time ago," she said. "I just didn't know what to do about it, until now." We spent the next 5 hours piecing together timelines, revisiting files, cross-referencing metadata. By 1 a.m., we had built a timeline that showed Cassandra's rise and the cover-ups she left behind. But something still felt off. Too neat. Too planned. That's when Dana asked the question I hadn't wanted to face. What if she's done this before? I paused. If Cassandra had framed me this cleanly, it probably wasn't her first time. And if she had done it before, maybe someone else had already paid the price. Block 4. Skeletons in the server. The next morning, I couldn't shake Dana's question. What if she's done this before? I sat on my couch, staring at my laptop screen as the cursor blinked at me like a silent dare. Cassandra was too strategic, too composed in the moment she accused me. This wasn't her first betrayal. It was just the latest. I needed to find the others. So I started digging into Argon Tech's archives, or at least the parts I had quietly mirrored over the years for efficiency and offline access. Call it paranoia, or maybe a deep understanding of how unstable Cassandra's leadership had always been. But I never trusted cloud-only workflows. I kept offline backups of departmental reports going back 5 years. And that's when I found him. Elliot Rhodes. 3 years ago, Elliot had been director of vendor relations. Smart, soft-spoken, always kept a candy jar on his desk. People liked him. Then one day, poof. He resigned for personal reasons. I remember because his goodbye email felt strange, flat, corporate, not like him at all. And Cassandra took over his department temporarily right after. I searched for his name across my files. Buried in a Q1 report from that year, I found a change order processed under his name to a vendor that no longer existed. The name? Ardent Systems Limited. I checked the financial record. It showed a single lump payment, $87,400, authorized by Elliot, for infrastructure consulting. But the invoice was generic. The logo on the PDF didn't match any vendor style guide. The IP address logged for the transaction didn't quite match Elliot OS device ID from prior records. It matched Cassandra's office subnet. She had done this before. Elliot didn't quit. He was forced out, just like me. I tracked him down through LinkedIn. He was now living in Vermont, working as a consultant for a small nonprofit. His profile looked quiet, disconnected. The kind of professional exile that doesn't happen by accident. I sent him a message. "Elliot, I believe you were set up at Argon Tech. I know because she's doing it again. I need to talk to you, please." He didn't reply that day, or the next. I started to worry. Then, 3 days later, an email arrived from an encrypted address. "You don't know what you're getting into, but I'll talk. I can't do it over email. Call me. Burner attached. Don't use your real number." Attached was a number, and instructions to use a VoIP scrambler. I called that night. Elliot answered after 3 rings. His voice was low, guarded. I was wondering when she'd go after someone else. I told him everything. The fake vendors, the shell company, the planted evidence, Dana's help, Cassandra's silence. Elliot didn't sound surprised, only tired. She tried to bury me under a non-disclosure. I signed under pressure, threat of litigation. A settlement offer dangled in front of me if I walked away and kept quiet. I couldn't fight it then. I was drowning. Do you have anything? Anything she missed? I asked. He hesitated. Then, maybe. I saved something, a flash drive, something she didn't know I copied. But if I give it to you, you have to finish this, all of it. I will, I said, not even blinking. You'll need more than a flash drive, he said. You'll need someone on the inside. I have someone. Then he said the words that lit the fuse. She's not just hiding money. Cassandra is hiding people. I sat back, pulse racing. What do you mean? She has contacts in legal and offshore accounts. The money she funneled? It wasn't just for real estate. It was hush money. For who? You'll see. Block 5, the hidden ledger. Elliot overnighted the flash drive via a private courier. No return address, no labels, just a plain silver USB tucked into a folded piece of paper with one line. This is everything she didn't want seen. Good luck. I plugged it into a secondary laptop with no network connection, just in case. The drive contained a single encrypted folder labeled CR Scrub. I cracked it within the hour using a brute tool ID built years ago during a penetration testing side project. What I found stopped me cold. There were financial logs going back 4 years, all connected to a hidden shadow ledger. The real ledger, one that ran parallel to Argon Tech's official books. It was sophisticated, hidden in plain sight, behind layers of innocuous duplicate files. But the data showed nearly $6.8 million routed through 9 companies, many with no legitimate business footprint. They weren't vendors, they were payment silos. Several were registered in Belize and the Isle of Man, classic offshore jurisdictions. Each transfer was tagged with a code, CRHP, CRHL, CRHK. I didn't know what those meant. Yet. But then I opened the folder named Retainers. It contained scanned NDAs, all signed, dozens of them. Most were boilerplate hush contracts, payment in exchange for silence on internal misconduct. Some dated back to before Cassandra even became VP. The names. Some I recognized, former employees I hadn't thought of in years. Others were strangers. But then there was one I never expected. Leah Keene. Leah had been a junior project manager on Cassandra's team 2 years ago. Smart, warm, always brought homemade cookies to meetings. She vanished after a leave of absence, and we were told she'd moved for personal reasons. There were whispers, of course. One said she had a breakdown, another said she left after a bad breakup. But in this folder, there was Leah's signature on an NDA, accompanied by a $72,000 payout. The cause? Settled allegations of executive coercion and hostile work environment. And the executive listed? Cassandra R. Grant. It wasn't just fraud. It wasn't just embezzlement. It was abuse, exploitation, control. And every single piece of it was cataloged, logged, preserved. I sent the documents to Dana through a secure file drop. Her response was immediate. This is bigger than we thought. She didn't just frame you. She's been feeding off the system, cleaning her tracks with money, threats, and silence. The board has to see this, I replied. They won't believe just you and me, she said. But if we bring Leah back... She didn't finish the sentence, because we both knew what that would mean. We had to find Leah, convince her to speak, bring her out of whatever quiet, fearful place she'd been pushed into. But if Cassandra found out what we were planning before we got to Leah, I wouldn't just lose my career. I might lose my freedom. Or worse. Block 6. A voice in the shadows. It took Dana 2 days to find a lead on Leah. Leah had scrubbed most of her digital footprint. No LinkedIn, no Instagram. Even her old Gmail account bounced back messages. But Dana remembered something. Leah used to volunteer at a domestic violence shelter in Atlanta. She checked the most recent tax filings from the nonprofit AS Public Records and found a name listed under part-time admin staff, L. Keene. That was our window. I sent a handwritten letter, old-fashioned, careful, no digital trail. I kept it short. Leah, I don't know if you remember me. I'm Natalie Ruiz from Argonne Tech. I know why you left. And I have proof you weren't the only one. I believe Cassandra Grant silenced you. She tried to destroy me too. If you're willing, I'd like to meet. I'll be in Atlanta on Thursday noon at the Greenhouse Cafe on East Ponce. I'll wait an hour. If I don't see you, I'll disappear, and you'll never hear from me again. N. I mailed it Monday morning. Drove to Atlanta Wednesday night. Slept in my car outside the cafe because I didn't want to risk being tracked. Thursday, noon. I sat at a table near the back, facing the entrance. I waited. At 12:41 p.m. I saw her. Leah had changed. Her hair was shorter. No makeup. She walked cautiously, eyes scanning the room like someone who'd learned the hard way that trust can be fatal. I stood. Leah? She nodded. We didn't speak until we had tea in front of us. She was the one who broke the silence. You said she did it to you too? I nodded. She framed me, planted evidence, used my credentials to cover her theft. Leah closed her eyes. I knew she'd do it again. I found your NDA, the payments, the buried HR reports. I never thought anyone would look. She left me no choice. Leah looked down at her tea, then back at me. Do you know what she did to me? I shook my head. She didn't just coerce me. She manipulated me, gaslit me, threatened to destroy my reputation if I didn't play along. She said I owed her my career, that I was nothing without her mentorship. When I pushed back, she accused me of harassment, filed a report. I had no evidence, no leverage. HR was terrified of her. She paid you to disappear. She paid me to disappear and stay silent. I signed because I was drowning. I needed the money to get out, start over. But I've never slept right since. I reached into my bag and placed a copy of the CR Scrub flash drive on the table. You're not alone. There's more. Dozens. I just need your voice, your story, on record. Leah stared at the drive. I can't go public, she said, but I'll talk to the board. Anonymously, if I have to. It's time. We agreed on a secure plan. Leah would send a sworn statement to the board's ethics committee through a lawyer Dana knew from a prior whistleblower case. She'd include her experience, the NDA, and how Cassandra manipulated the system. By the time I returned home that weekend, the document had been submitted. Now it was a countdown. We'd exposed Cassandra's past, but we still had to confront her present. Because while we were uncovering the truth, Cassandra was making moves of her own. Block 7. The Queen makes her move. By Monday morning, the board had Leah's statement. Dana confirmed the submission went through, accompanied by copies of the CR Scrub ledger and a summary timeline we built together. The silence that followed was heavy, but not unexpected. These things never move quickly, especially when the accused sits in the executive suite. But Cassandra, she didn't wait. That morning, I received a letter from a high-powered legal firm in D.C., delivered by courier. The envelope was crisp, thick, the kind of stationery that smells like money. Inside were 3 sheets, a cease and desist accusing me of defamation and breach of confidentiality, a threat of a civil suit seeking damages for reputational harm, a warning that if I disclosed private company data again, they would seek criminal charges. No signature from Cassandra herself. Of course not. Only her name at the top of the firm's letterhead. She was moving fast, trying to lock me down before the board could react. Dana called minutes after I opened it. You got one too? She asked, her voice tight. Yeah. She's scared. Dana said. "She's lashing out." "Or cleaning house," I replied, because the timing wasn't a coincidence. Cassandra knew we were close, that Leah had talked, that we had proof. She was trying to intimidate us into silence. I had two options: retreat or escalate. I chose the latter. That night, I recorded a full video, 27 minutes long. I didn't post it online. Not yet. But I sent it to the board, marked confidential, through my attorney. In it, I explained everything. The vendor fraud, the fake shell companies, the NDA silencing Leah, Elliot's exile, the financial ledger, Cassandra's pattern of manipulation and retaliation. I ended the video with a line I hadn't planned, but it came out raw, unscripted. She took my career, tried to steal my name, but she underestimated how much I remember, how much I documented, and how little I have left to lose. 2 days later, I got the call. A board representative. Private number. Female voice. Direct. "We've reviewed your materials, Ms. Ruiz. We're placing Ms. Grant under administrative leave effective immediately. An external investigation will be conducted. You'll be contacted for testimony." I sat on my kitchen floor after that call, phone still in my hand, heart pounding like a war drum. I'd done it. I'd cracked the fortress. But the war wasn't over. Not yet. Because Cassandra wasn't the type to vanish quietly. And power like hers, it never goes down without a final swing. Block 8. The counterstrike. Cassandra's administrative leave was announced quietly, buried in a late Friday memo to all staff as a temporary restructuring due to internal review. No names, no context, just silence from the top floor and confusion everywhere else. But I knew better. This wasn't retreat, it was repositioning. That weekend, Dana sent me a screenshot from an anonymous forum used by mid-level execs and HR insiders, a post titled, "Whistleblowers Weaponizing Old Accusations to Destroy Women in Power." The language was pointed. Subtle references to bitter former employees, misused records, and manufactured narratives. The post was upvoted fast, shared even faster, with replies defending Cassandra's legacy. She's a visionary, just another woman punished for being ambitious. I almost laughed, bitterly. Cassandra was manipulating the public narrative, trying to reframe the facts as gendered backlash, weaponizing feminism to paint herself as the victim. She was smart, I'd give her that. But the truth doesn't go away because it's inconvenient, especially not when it's backed by receipts. That Monday, I met with the external investigation team, a neutral third-party firm hired by the board, 2 lawyers, 1 forensic accountant. We spent 7 hours in a rented conference room downtown. I gave them the entire timeline, every document, every timestamp. Dana had already provided corroborating files. Elliot submitted an affidavit. Leah's lawyer followed up with more names, 3 others who'd signed NDAs. The investigation was no longer just about fraud. It had become a reckoning. But Cassandra wasn't finished. That Wednesday, I came home to find my front door ajar. Nothing was stolen. No signs of forced entry. Just a subtle shift. A chair slightly moved, a window cracked open, a cabinet drawer unlatched. It was a message. No fingerprints, no alarms. Just that cold knowledge you get when someone wants you to know they were there. I reported it, of course. Police took a statement, shrugged. No cameras, no witnesses. But I knew. Cassandra still had people willing to get their hands dirty. That night, I backed up every document I had into 4 separate encrypted cloud vaults. 1 in Iceland, 1 in Singapore, 1 local, 1 on a USB buried in the base of my flower pot by the front door. I wasn't going to be intimidated. Not now. The next morning, I received a subpoena from the SEC. Apparently, Argon Tech had filed an emergency disclosure. Irregularities in vendor payments flagged during routine audits. I wasn't the one under investigation. Cassandra was. and the noose was tightening. Block 9. The collapse. By the time the SEC formally launched their inquiry into Argon Tech's finances, Cassandra had vanished. Her company email bounced back auto replies. Her condo in Midtown was listed for sale. Cash only, quick close. Her car hadn't moved in days, and none of her usual contacts had seen her since her leave was announced. It was as if she'd melted into the cracks of the system she once controlled. But I wasn't worried about finding her. I was worried about what she'd leave behind. The board called a special session. Closed door, unrecorded, but not undocumented. Dana and I were both invited to present our findings again, this time to the full executive committee and legal counsel. We were told in clear terms, this wasn't just a review, it was preparation for a criminal referral. They were building a case not only to sever ties with Cassandra, but to protect the company from liability. I walked into that room wearing the same blazer I wore the day I got suspended, a symbol, a reminder. They gave me 30 minutes. I took 12. Because the truth didn't need flourishes, just facts. And when I handed over the final report, the one that included the list of shell companies, the payment trail to Julian Mercer, the NDA scan with Leah's name and Elliot's whistleblower timeline, there was no room left for denial. They didn't ask follow-up questions. They asked for a recess. When the board returned, they gave me 3 things: a formal letter of apology for the mishandling of my suspension, a request for my cooperation in the SEC case, an offer, full reinstatement, with back pay, and a newly created role, Director of Ethics and Internal Oversight. I stared at the offer letter for a long time, and then I said no. Because Cassandra wasn't just a glitch in the system. She was the system. And if they really wanted to fix it, they needed to start by cleaning house, not just rebranding the same rot. I offered to assist externally, as a consultant, independent, free to speak if necessary. They agreed. 3 days later, news broke. Former Argon Tech executive under investigation for multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. They didn't name her at first. But then, the SEC published their subpoena list. And there it was. Cassandra Renee Grant, primary subject. The forums that once defended her went silent. The coworkers who once avoided me started sending quiet thank you messages. Leah sent a voice note. I can breathe again. Thank you for not letting this die. And Elliot sent a single line. You did what I couldn't. I hope it brings you peace. But peace is complicated, because even after justice begins, the scars stay. Block 10, the quiet. After it's been 7 months, Argon Tech is still recovering. The SEC case is ongoing, and while the board issued its statements and restructured leadership, the truth sits like a bruise beneath the surface, visible to those who know where to press. Cassandra was finally located in the Cayman Islands. She was extradited in February. The case against her is substantial, over 130 pieces of evidence submitted, including financial records, whistleblower testimonies, and the internal logs from the CR Scrub folder. She's facing charges for wire fraud, obstruction of justice, retaliatory termination, and misuse of corporate funds. The DA called it a sophisticated betrayal of trust within one of the country's fastest-growing tech firms. But I haven't watched a single hearing. I don't need to. My war ended the moment I chose to stop surviving and start fighting. These days I work independently. I help startups build ethical frameworks, develop reporting structures that actually work, and train their leadership teams to see red flags before they become headlines. It's slow, honest work. It doesn't erase what happened, but it builds something better. Dana still works at Argon Tech. She took the new internal oversight role. We talk weekly. Sometimes we joke about the old days. Sometimes we don't. Leah moved to Seattle. She's finishing her social work degree, working part-time at another nonprofit. This time, one with a real HR department. She sends postcards. Elliot. He finally published a book. It's not about Cassandra, not directly, but it is about how people lose their voice, and what it takes to find it again. And me? I keep a copy of the flash drive in a locked box. Not because I need it, but because sometimes we have to remember the systems we survived in order to never rebuild them again. Cassandra thought she could erase me, turn me into a footnote in her story of dominance. But in the end, she wasn't the architect of her own empire. She was the collapse. And I was the foundation that walked away, and then brought the house down.